Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host for the show, and today I am pleased to welcome Cassandra Pollock joining me today, and we're going to be talking about the difference between a disability income versus a livable income. This is going to be an interesting topic that we're going to be discussing today. So,
poverty level versus
poverty line
It's
versus
poverty line.
just
Yeah.
I hate to say the word poverty because the poverty should not exist in Canada. So this will be an interesting topic that we're going to be discussing today. So please tune in. If you're watching live, send in your questions, and if we have a chance to answer them, we will go through. And if not, we'll compile them and we'll answer them on our next segment.
Last time, I just have to say, when we had Jennifer on, I wasn't really looking closely at the chat, and so I know that Dan was on, and he thought that he was being ignored, and it's just because I wasn't. It's just because I wasn't looking at the chat, so
you weren't paying attention.
So it's my fault if I don't see if I don't see it. It's always my fault. It's not the guest's fault because I'm the only one that can see the see the chat.
Well, that's what happened to me too. I had somebody send me a direct message and ask me a question to ask on the show while I was busy engaging with the guest. I'm not looking at my phone going then because otherwise then I'm going, okay, so I'm not looking at the guest. I'm down. And I did it that one day and all of a sudden Neil's like, you're on. I'm like, looking at the notes. Oh, I'm online. So I try not to do that. So I try to stay focused. I've watched on the news hour too, and they're looking down and at their notes, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm on live. I saw that the other day. I'm like, oh, geez. I'm thinking, how familiar is that one? So, Cassandra, so welcome back to the show. As always, it's a great pleasure having you on. These topics are very important to kind of break down the two differences here. It's very interesting to hear our take on this.
I want to quickly do a plug for my podcast, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm going to be talking about another topic about. I have a friend it happens to be in BC that I'm setting up an interview with about it's to do with safe supply, which I'm going to be doing on the politics of disability and equity. And I wanted to let you know about that. I don't know when it's going to be, but I'll give you a heads up when I'm ready to go. But in the meantime, you all know my frustration. I get upset with Jeff because he's always talking about poverty level, and it's like, no. No. But because what they're calling the poverty line or the poverty threshold is I think a more accurate term, is actually it's like, I think in Quebec they're basing it on like 49% of what a livable income is. What's considered a livable wage or livable income. So I say livable income mainly because I think it should be about income and not wage. Livable wage, but it comes from the livable wage. Livable wage is literally, now let me quickly look at my notes, because so livable wage is basically it's based on working age adults. Where is it? Why we need it? So working age, they're looking at working age adults and what a livable wage is for the geographic area you live in, that will cover all, like, not just cover your basic necessities, but cover your rent, cover give you enough money so that you can actually participate in society outside of work and survival. And now I'll tell you, in my calculations, I used a 40-hour work week as full-time because a 40-hour work week is what, that's Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 is 40 hours, right? And they were basing some of their calculations on a 35-hour work week. And I don't think that that's as accurate. That's my opinion. So I want to qualify that. some of the things that I looked at, like I did some calculation, livable income in Canada's largest city. So, and this is 2022 numbers. And one of the things I noticed, and I sent you a link to the Stats Can, which is a living wage in a lot of major cities in Canada. It's a list of them. And there was a dramatic increase in most areas in just 1 year, between 2021 and 2022. There's a large increase in what a livable wage is considered. So it's based on an hourly wage, basically. And so Alberta, it's $22.40 an hour, which gives you 46,000 annually at 40 hours a week. That's 46,592 dollars a year. Yeah, that's for and these are all calculations based on a single person.
Wow.
So this isn't a family because there's calculations for family and single parent with one child, so forth. This is for a single person.
And I think we should maybe mention too, like whether it's poverty level numbers or livable income numbers, both of those calculations I don't think take into account that people with disabilities automatically are paying more.
Right? And this.
So,
and I'll get to
both
that.
Of those, both of those don't take into that account, right?
Oh yeah. Because
no. This is based on these numbers that I'm giving you are based on a single person without any disabilities.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is because they don't do that calculation. We do know that at minimum, a person with disabilities is paying 40% more. But yeah, when they do these calculations, this is based on a single person without any disability, a single working age person without any disabilities. They're basing it on the fact that they're working, but I'm going to qualify that later because there's something important in there in some of my notes.
It's the CRPD tax. We have to say it's the CRPD
that's why dirt is out of it.
Yeah, a CRPD tax, exactly. Yeah. So Alberta, $22.40 an hour, $46,592 a year. BC, $24.29 an hour, 50, which brings you 50,523 at 40 hours a week. Ontario, $23.15 an hour, which is 40, and these are the largest cities for the most part. So like Toronto, so $23.15 an hour, which gives you 48,152. And I find it interesting that the cost of, everybody always thinks Ontario's got a higher cost of living, but it's actually lower than BC's. And so none of it is the highest of. I wanted to pick one territory, and this is the highest of the territories, and it's $26 an hour, which is $54,080 a year.
Wow. Yeah, but a lot of stuff in there. That's why the costs are.
Yeah, and I only highlighted a few. Like I wanted to highlight Alberta, BC, and Ontario, but I wanted to also throw in one of the territories and in that because there's more calculations. You can probably look up your city in that link that I provided. But Spring Financial did a thing, and they averaged out what a living income is in Canada, because all these living incomes are calculated based on geographic areas and so forth. Okay. So Spring Financial, down to
your city, you narrow it right down to your city, that number could be
right. Up, and so an average is when you calculate all these calculations you add all these calculations up together and then divide it by the
overall
number. And gives you that's what an average, how an average is done. The average living income in Canada would be 45,000 a year annually, and so that's kind of
one of the comments that I wanted to make, just to interject, was you're throwing out these numbers and they're a lot higher numbers than, of course, what we're getting now. But even even to the extent that everybody's been talking about the Canada Disability benefit too, and I mean nobody really knows what the dollar figure is going to be, but I mean everybody's pretty confident that it's not going to be anywhere close
to that.
To the livable incomes that you're throwing out there,
well,
right?
It's not going to be even like there's even conjecture that will it even meet what they call the poverty line.
It doesn't seem
or
like
the
it will
poverty
be.
threshold. That's really more the concern. That's I know why Jeff is always like Jeff is pounding on the poverty level, and it's like no, because that's not a real thing. That's something. It's 50% of it's actually I think it's based on about 49 to 50% of what they call a median income. And right, and it's like, but if you're not like even my brother is blue collar cis white male without any disabilities, and him and I were having a because we were talking about my mom and services, and we even had a conversation, and I was telling him a little bit about my research between what's a livable income, and I'm like, well, if you're not making a livable income, you're in poverty, right? And he goes, yeah. Like even he was like, yeah, of course, if you're not making what is a livable income, then you are living in poverty. And that is my whole point. And so I did some things, and I want to go into some of the comments. So Fraser Institute, this was in 2020. They did something else. I provided a link to the whole report, a critical assessment of Canada's official poverty line. And they said, the more important concern with MBM or market basket measure as our official measure of poverty is conceptual. By choosing to define poverty as a condition in which a person is unable to acquire a living standard needed to integrate and participate in society, the government has rendered poverty unmeasurable. There is simply no way to credibly assign an income or basket of goods that will assure participation, in large part because of the widely divergent interpretations of participation or inclusion. It is arguable whether income is even as important as other attributes like intelligence, attractiveness, self-confidence, and self-sufficiency to the goal of inclusion. And as of the latest, this is the 2020 revision, the MBM line has increased substantially due largely to higher deemed costs of shelter, so that families of four in most urban centers in Canada would have to have total incomes in excess of $60,000 to escape poverty. This and this is 2020. This I suggest is not reasonable line for poverty. It bears no connection to the understanding of poverty that most people have, as cited in the paper, which relates to the lack of basic necessities, and bears no connection to the way journalists and politicians routinely describe people in poverty, hunger, material deprivation, suffering. It is predictable, however, that societal justice activists are not satisfied with the level of the market basket measure and want more items included in the basket. So that's the Fraser Institute. I mean, and progressives like to rail against the right-wing Fraser Institute, but hey, even they're saying it. And just this year, BC CTV News, wrote an article about about basically working age, raising the alarms about working age adults living in poverty, and it was based on a report. They're saying the report raises alarms, and it's like one in five, and as the survey for community food centers said, 22% of working age adults live below what they call the poverty line. Working age single adults represent half of the 1.8 million Canadians living in deep poverty and have an average annual income of $11,700.
Wow.
That's 1 in 5 Canadian, 22% of the population.
Wow.
$11,700. And that's everybody. So the low income threshold, or poverty line as they like to refer to, the low income threshold is 25,252 for a single adult household. And I want you to keep that in mind. That goes back to the numbers I was just talking about.
Right.
Like, remember the living wage numbers?
Yeah.
They're almost all, 40.
Yeah, way up there.
40 to 50% higher than what they're calling the low income threshold or low income or poverty line. Like, think about that. Like, they're what the government market basket measures, the report is saying the threshold is for the poverty line is $25,252 for a single adult, but a living wage in the most in some of the largest cities is between $46,000 and $54,000 a year. So how is the poverty line only 25,000, but a living income is around 50,000?
But I guess, like, to be fair though, like, when they rolled out CERB was $2,000.
Yeah,
it was $24,000 a year.
Yeah, so that's right at the 24, 25,000.
Well, it's below. Even that was below what their threshold is. But yeah.
But to be fair, that's right around that same number. So,
well, that's what they had already come out with, because they had designated the market basket measure as the official measurement for the poverty line in Canada in 2018, in August 2018, I think. I might have that. It was sometime in 2018. So move forward, when they rolled out CERB, that was like 2020.
Yeah.
So that's 2 years later. And so, they were literally basing it. They were basing it on their market basket measure.
Yeah, in 2021, they said it was 2207. And it was interesting on that because recently we, Sonia and Jeff and myself, we had a meeting with the Minister of Social Development, Poverty Reduction in British Columbia. And we all thought we were going to be going with the LICO formula that Jeff had mentioned that we've just, discussing. And we found out that the government is going to be the BC government's going to be going with their federal counterparts, going with the market basket measure. And they're going to be gearing the seniors how they do the GIS. And so,
I know, don't even get me started, because I actually want to finish. It's frustrating. So working single adults make up about 40% of all food insecure households in Canada. Think about working age, regardless of their working age single adults with no dependents make up 40% of all food insecure households in Canada.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like,
which is crazy, because you think it would be mostly families with kids would be more.
No, it's 40% of all households it's
climbing.
Single.
It's climbing.
Right, and all the focus is on families and purchasing a home, and it's like it's frustrating. So in BC but then it goes on. Like I'm going to take a couple more quotes one more quote from that, because the other thing the BC CTV News article from June cited was that in BC, for an example, if you're on income support, you get $914. So this is not PWD for disability, but just $914 a month from social assistance. Right. And a 1-bedroom apartment costs you over $2,200 a month.
Yeah, depending on the community in Victoria.
What's going to be?
But that's the average. But
what's going to be the new total for BC here, Brent? When they up the, because it's going to increase $150, right?
125.
Yeah.
125. Sorry. Yeah. So what's the new calculation now? Because the reason I don't know that is because they're clawing back $500 from me every month still because of my survivor's pension.
Well, it's 14. I thought it was like $14.95 or something when with the addition with their top up.
Yeah, right now it's $13.58.50 is the base amount. Okay, so if you don't want a bus pass, you don't want to travel around, and you want to feel secluded in your home, and you don't want to go anywhere, have everything delivered to you. Of course, it's going to cost you in grocery deliveries from delivery companies. God forbid if you want to take a taxi. But anyway, if you don't want a bus pass, so you got $52, which they never did reinstore the bus pass, which they said they were going to, but they government dismantled the program apparently. I don't know.
Unicorns. It's unicorns, Brent. Unicorns.
Yeah.
So with no bus pass, that's what you're gonna get right now.
$14.10.
Right now, that's what it is, right?
And the average household like rent for one.
So we're $125 for the people in market housing. Yeah. In subsidized housing, you won't get it, or supportive housing. But in market housing, you'll get another $125. Oh boy, don't spend it all in one place, folks.
Right. So the average one bedroom apartment is $2,200 a month.
Yeah.
Like where are BC is so out to lunch, and I'm so disappointed.
So my point is like, even if you went with the absolute lowest number of $2,000 that they gave for CERB, that's still like almost $500 under, right?
The poverty. Well, it's under the poverty. It's under the poverty line.
Just going with the CERB number, it's $500 under CERB even.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, I think just under $400.
Yeah, so like if you take just me as an example, can you imagine if they actually even just went up to the CERB level of 2,000 and they said, okay, no more clawbacks? That would mean that I would get an extra $1,000 a month.
Oh, I know.
If they did, because right now, like I said, I'm getting $500 less because of the clawback, and we're $500 below the CERB level, right? So can you imagine? Can you imagine if they went $500 to match the CERB level plus got rid of all the clawbacks? I would be plus $1,000 a month. You know how much a huge difference that would make? It was being like massive.
Well, I know, and I should know too. Like, like when I was doing those calculations are before tax income of the living income. So it would be your take home would be slightly less because you're basing it. I think all those fit within the lower tax bracket of 15%. So if you subtract your CPP and your overall 15%, it would be, a little bit less per month, but at the same time, it's still stark, right?
If you have a damage deposit, they're going to take $20 off you per month. So then you take that off the total. So now,
you're down to $15.15. Yeah.
15,
I know. So
and here's that number. I was just going to mention that number, that magic number, 1515. I remember that number back in COVID times, because the ministry would say to me, "Okay, Brent, this is." And the landlord that I rented from wanted to have proof that what is your income from the ministry? Can you get them to do a printout? So I went to the ministry's office. They said, okay, this is the form. Give it to your landlord. Now going forward, Brent, whoever you rent from, if you move from where you're living, wherever you go, that is the amount going forward. 1515. That magic number always stuck. And I still have the form sitting here.
Yep.
Well, here. So, but what's funny is because the landlord said, when they took away the COVID supplement, now that dropped it down. And the landlord said, well, you told me that was the amount going forward. So I remember going to the ministry again. I said, well, my landlord's now mad. Well, that's the amount we were told going forward that you will be getting.
Oh my God. I know. I know. All the governments at all levels really need to get their act together. And I've got more like policy options or options politics. My French accent is terrible.
Sounds like a late night commercial ad.
Yeah,
wait,
I know,
there's more.
Yeah, like there. In 20 this is they wrote this one in 2018 in a paper called "Why We Need to Fix Canada's New Measure of Poverty." So they wrote this the same year that Canada said we're going to use the market basket measure as the official measurement for the poverty threshold, the low income poverty anyway. So or poverty line, as we like to think. And so why we need to fix Canada's new measure, and I'm got a few excerpts that I wanted to highlight. The government's, and I'm doing this because I want people to know, like, there are policy experts and people doing research and reports and surveys that are writing this stuff while the government is making all these decisions, okay, and telling us what poverty is and what's going to lift us out of poverty. There are academics and journalists and other people that are highlighting all the things wrong with what they're doing and how it needs to be fixed. So the government policy options 2018, why we need to fix Canada's new poverty. The government's new tool for measuring poverty is flawed, failing to acknowledge such key factors such as childcare fees and actual housing costs. The way in which we measure poverty in Canada are complex and often largely inaccessible to the public, but they speak volumes about our priorities as a country. Statistic Canada currently assembles and this is just before they implemented the market basket measure. Statistics Canada at the time assembles income poverty data based on 3 measurements: low income cutoff, otherwise known as LICO, the market basket measure, or MBM, and the internationally comparable low income measure, or LIM. Without a single measure designated as an official poverty line for Canada, federal, provincial, territorial governments, and civil society organizations have been using a mixture of these measurements to determine poverty rates. This practice makes it difficult to compare regional and national progress or lack thereof. So Canada's first poverty reduction strategy in August 2018, the federal government has dedicated itself to creating the country's first official poverty line based on the market basket measure. The market basket measure will be balanced with a dashboard of other indicators of poverty that will be used to track and measure progress of the strategy in meeting in reduction targets. There are serious gaps in the market basket measure. If we don't fix them, it will be more of a barrier for people living in poverty than a tool to help them. Our focus as a country should be on our human rights obligations to create an environment in which people have adequate standard of living. The current design of MBM is less than helpful as Canada strives to fulfill these obligations. The basket includes categories one would expect to see under the umbrella of basic needs: housing, food, clothing, and transportation, plus other expenses. The total cost varies from community and community. In 2015, in some parts of Quebec, this number was 33,000, whereas in some places in Alberta, it was 41,000. But some vital daily costs don't even make it into the basket. So things that don't make it into the basket, and there's more, but the ones they highlighted, policy options highlighted, were childcare, prescription medication, as out-of-pocket expenses, not basic. They're designated as out-of-pocket expenses and not basic needs. Well, these are costs that many families in Canada consider indispensable. The market basket measure does not treat them as such. So that is policy options in 2018, talking about the government of Canada using the market basket measure as the measurement, the official poverty threshold or poverty line measurement, and all the flaws in it. And you know, I keep talking about living wage, so I did want to highlight CBC Toronto in January of this year, what makes a living wage and why that matters to workers across Ontario. Ontario's average living wage, so this is averaged out. I know what I quoted was for Toronto. The average living wage across the whole all jurisdictions is $19.72 per hour. And I think I wrote a note that so that's $41,017 a year that averaged out. According to a group that calculates the amount of money someone needs to make each hour to make ends meet. So this is what they look. We look at all the major and even some of the secondary expenses. So this is how they measure living wage. So, we look at all the major and some of the secondary expenses that a worker would have to cover where they live as they're working full time. So the major ones are obvious: shelter, food, transportation, and childcare. But they also include things like high-speed internet access, non-OHIP medical costs. So things that aren't covered by the provincial health care, such as prescriptions. Then they also factor in applicable government taxes, transfers, and benefits. And so that's how they determine. That's a snapshot in how a living wage is determined versus how the poverty line. So the calculation for the poverty line is very basic, excludes a lot of basic needs, whereas the calculation for a living wage includes all these secondary expenses and out-of-pocket expenses that are essential to a person's life. Now, they're saying what is essential, and this is where I'm going to qualify it. They're saying for what is essential for if you're working, but arguably, there's a term that I've used and other people have used, is that some people are too poor to work. Mm-hmm. And what that means, if you're not making a living income, so if you're on income support or on disability and you're not making a living income, you're too poor to work, because in order to get a job, and forget about any kind of assistive technology or accommodations as a person with a disability, but just to get a job without all of that stuff, you still need to be cover the same things that somebody that's actually got a job needs to cover. Mm-hmm. Right? In order to get to work. Right? Like, you can't wait till you need them before you find the job in order to find the job. You can't just try to struggle by and hope you get a job and then you can cover them. It makes no sense, right?
Well, I've said before too, like I've said the example of the guy that I helped on the from the Disability Foundation, one of the clients. He had social housing from BC Housing, and it was a really unsafe environment, right, where he was being threatened. His life was being threatened, and so and this is a guy that wanted to work. He wanted to work, but how can you try to find work when your life is being threatened every day? And so then,
well, just survival. Even if you're even if you're not being physically threatened by another person, if you're living like a lot of us are, like being forced to live on disability. I mean, there are threats to my life every day that are not coming from an individual, but are just coming from my life, like my ability to navigate in and out of my suite because I've got these 10 steep stairs.
Right.
And I'm in the process of trying to find a new place to live.
Yeah.
Once I settle in, I can start going back to continue my journey of looking into going back to school or getting a job. Mm-hmm. But until that happens, I can't do it. So I have to try to find something that's within my means right now. Yeah. And there's almost nothing. And that's a threat to my life as a person with disabilities, because I have all these needs that are not being met in my current situation while I'm struggling just to survive.
Yeah, exactly. and the second part of what I was going to say was this guy had his life threatened, but then BC Housing agreed to move him the one time, and so he went from having his life threatened to having smelly carpets. Ooh. Where the landlord wasn't going to do anything to remedy it. So
right, it's still unhealthy and a threat to his life, even though it's not.
Yeah, so then he had insomnia. So then he suffered from insomnia, and he wasn't eating healthy because of, a limited budget. As we all know, a limited food budget. So he's not sleeping well. He's not eating well, and yet you're expected to hold on the job. I mean,
right.
Good luck, right? Yeah. Good luck.
Well, exactly. and that's where I want to get into, like, minimum wage. Where is the rest of my? Okay, so one of the other things he said is who are the people taking on, one of the questions asked of the guy they were interviewing is who are the people taking on minimum wage jobs? Well, because and I want to highlight this. So an average living income is across Canada. If you average out all the living incomes geographically, if you average them all out, it's 45,000 annually, right? Wow. A minimum wage worker working full time is only making 31,200 a year. Mm-hmm. That's their income, 31,200 at 50, and that's based on the average minimum wage of $15 an hour. So if you're making,
so that's way below. That's way below the.
Right. That's still below what's considered what the average livable income is. And this is a minimum wage worker. So he says, what we know, and so who are taking on the minimum wage jobs? Well, the people that are earning at the bottom scale of the wage spectrum are overwhelmingly, guess what? Equity seeking groups. So people with disabilities, women, immigrants, racialized people, we're the people that within those equity seeking groups, we're the ones that are even if we get off of supports or manage to get a job where we can work full time, we're on average working the minimum wage, which is only, it's still like, it's still, if you average it out, like if you go on the average 45,000 across Canada, you're still, $14 or $15,000 a year below what you actually need to live. Mm-hmm. Right. And then if you're, like it's ridiculous. And their low income cutoff. Here's my frustration with low income cutoffs. It's an uneven measure. So tell me, back to my livable income in the largest city. So Alberta, Calgary, $22.40 an hour, which is 46,592 a year. If you want to get into a 1-bedroom apartment in social housing, get certain, like for home care, certain other services that you might need to live, the low income cutoff in Alberta is 48,000. But there's higher living wages. The highest living wage in Alberta is $32 an hour, which is 68,000. So that's the highest. Canmore, a living wage in Canmore is $32.75 an hour, which works out to 68,000.
So the cutoff in Alberta is 48,000, and in BC to have a subsidized housing. So at 48,000 in BC, how much is in BC?
So BC, the living wage in BC is a couple dollars higher. In like Vancouver, it's $24.29 an hour, which works out to, at 40 hours, an average 9 to 5 job,
right?
$50,523. Well, and so the thing about that is that the low end, what they call the low income cutoff, though, in BC, think about that. Yeah. Living wage 50,000, a living, and their low income cutoff is $30,000. Like my mother makes a couple $100. She's a senior. She's been working she's 80 something odd years old. She was working out of the home since she was 17 years old, paying her taxes, paying into the system, paying for CPP, paying for all of that since she was 17 years old.
Wow.
Okay. She's $200, give or take, $200 above the low income cutoff of 30,000 a year.
Oh wow, that's fair.
And yeah, and they treat it like she's like it's welfare or something. She paid for it. Yeah. and she can't get, like, I can't get her the services she needs. We're trying to get her into assisted living. It's really hard. There's wait lists. There's even longer if you need a subsidy. She doesn't qualify for like SAFER in BC because her income's too high, because that's that $30,000 cutoff is in order to get SAFER. She's above a couple $100 above that, so she can't get SAFER. There are some subsidies that she can get, but still, if I was looking at the sliding scale through Fraser Health in BC, and because I'm trying to calculate, how much does my mother need to, and I'm using my mother, like, she's a senior, but I mean, people with disabilities, there's no difference. We need the same services. We're in the same boat. The same services that a senior needs is the same actual services that are utilized by people with disabilities. And the fact that we separate us as if we're independent and don't need the same things is such
I'm gonna use a line from Jaws. Remember the line from Jaws?
Yeah.
We're gonna need a bigger boat. Remember that line?
Yeah.
I wish we could tell the government that we're gonna need a bigger boat.
But that's like saying that to disabled, like, it's like, oh, here, you can have subsidized housing. Oh, but you want market housing. Well, sorry, you want to pay more? Go for it. Oh,
pitting a disabled against a disabled and calling it a fair system is
it's
not.
It's like, oh, here's 25 for you in market housing, but you don't get it because we already give you subsidized.
And that's
think about it. My mom gets more. My mom does not, because my mom worked her whole life. She doesn't qualify for, like, she doesn't get old age security. I think might get old age, but she doesn't get like a guaranteed income supplement because she makes she gets enough from her combined pensions that she doesn't need it. So my mom's actually in a better position than most seniors her age. But she's still living in poverty, and they wanted her, so she ends up in the hospital, and the hospital is like, you need somebody to come check on you every day.
But when
and what does Fraser Health want to charge her? $30 a day. They're saying every day, like the hospital is saying she needs somebody to come look in on her every day. It's $30 frickin' a day for them to do that. That's $900 a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just because she's a couple $100 above what they call the low income cutoff in BC, she can't get it. Like, we're all, like, I'm an adult with disabilities.
Yeah.
I can't afford to move to BC. Like, just for example, not only will I lose about $500 in income, but just like my special diet allowance, I get 83 some odd dollars for my celiac disease. Do you know what they give for a celiac diet in BC on PWD?
I don't know,
$40.
Oh, that's $5 off.
40, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's half.
Enough for rice.
And the cost of living is like, look, the cost of living, a livable income, and it's like it's 30. What is it?
Sonia has an update on that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Sonia. Go ahead.
They updated all the supplements they raised them up
as of July 19th.
Like for me, I'm on the diabetes allowance. I get $60 from it.
As of July 19th.
Okay.
But what was it before?
Oh, it's $35.
$35.
So it's only $25 increase.
Oh wow.
Whoa! But hey, here's the thing, everybody. The government says apply for all these extra supplements, but what they're not telling you, these splashy headlines. Oh, you need a vitamin supplement. You need an iron supplement. You need all these things. But what they're not telling you, the workers at the office will say, apply, Brent, apply for all these supplements. But what they're not telling you is you've got to have all these medical conditions in order to get all these supplements.
Well, you have to prove, like, for instance, we know my dog, when I was, this is another complication for me.
Yeah.
When I was applying for, when I got the celiac diet, they said celiac, or I can get the supplement for either having celiac or for having a gluten intolerance. So there's a lot of people that do not have celiac disease, but they have gluten intolerance and they can't eat gluten. So you don't have to have
gluten-free diet. You get the new increase is $65 for gluten-free.
Still, I still get $83. Like it's like I'm still getting $20 more dollars more. Like it's ridiculous.
More in Alberta,
and so I would, you know what I mean? Like I'm sitting here, I've got this elderly mother. I'd like to be there for her, but I can't afford because I'd be losing. And not only that, if I moved to BC, there's things. So when I was diagnosed with celiac disease, what happened was I had all kinds of other symptoms related to celiac disease, but one of the symptoms that actually really got the ball, I had this rash. I spent a couple of years in and out of dermatologists. I had at one point, I had like 3 or 4 dermatologists standing around looking at my rash, trying to decide what was it, eczema, was it psoriasis, and they couldn't even figure it out. It was like, I got a new family doctor. He's the one that figured it out. He was like, but here's the mistake. At the time I was working, so I wasn't even thinking about I was going to need to be on AISH or anything like that. He says, just try something, just go gluten-free. If you want to know, go to this website, go Google it, and it'll tell you, so go gluten-free and see what happens. So I went gluten-free. Guess what happened? The rash disappeared. It's never come back since I've been gluten-free. I've never had it. So we know it was and I looked at pictures of the celiac rash. That's it. And the fact that freaking 3 or 4 dermatologists couldn't figure that out, when I'm like, I've been able to look at pictures and say, oh yeah, that's exactly the rash I had. But because we didn't do the blood test and then the biopsy, and I just went gluten-free, and there's no guarantee if I do this that the biopsy will not show a false negative.
Right.
Even if I do this, I have to go and I have to start eating gluten every day again for a minimum of 2 weeks, up to a month, before I have a possibility of damaging my gut, damaging my intestines enough that it'll show up on a biopsy or a blood test. And so, and so I've tried, because of that whole thing, I've actually tried to go on gluten and eat gluten every day. I have not been able to make it a week.
Sounds like a Fear Factor episode.
Well, the first few days it's like, okay, yeah, this is no problem. Oh, I'll do fine. And then you're getting to day 4 and 5 and you're like, oh my God, I am so ill and I'm so sick. And so my doctor knows that I have it. Like I had one dumb doctor that tried to, after I had been gluten-free for 7 years, tried to test me. And I'm like, I've been gluten-free for 7 years. Even if I have it, it's not going to show up. But he was just, but my other doctor knows that. He goes, oh no. He goes, definitely. When I told him about the rash, he's like, definitely celiac.
About that, Cassandra, because I remember once upon a time, my family doctor, he retired, he used to yell and scream at the government, go through a reassessment. He goes, damn well, he says, I've already assessed this guy. Why do I need to assess him? Why did his disabilities go away?
Well, that's it. I have to go back and get reassessed by a new doctor. And, I spent 2 years without a doctor. Now I've got a doctor again.
Yeah.
So to move to BC to help out my mother, I lose my income. I have a 3-month residency requirement.
Yeah.
Then I have to, I looked up the requirements for the gluten-free diet supplement under PWD, and they want a diagnosis of celiac disease, with the tests I was referring to, and it's like,
oh my gosh,
you can't just I've been how am I supposed to do that? And so they don't, at least here they include gluten intolerance, or they used to. I think they might have changed that, new government, UCP. I've been grandfathered in, but you know, the fact that they want to make you, and it's like, well, there's such a thing as gluten intolerance. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real diagnosable thing, and some people aren't celiac, but they still can't tolerate gluten for some reason. And it could be to do with just because gluten's a protein, so it could be just an inability to tolerate any kind, you know, a lot of types of proteins like casein and stuff like that in milk.
Yeah, I put that with peanut butter, like bread.
Yeah.
There's certain breads doesn't affect me. There's other breads it does, and it's really weird. And they cannot get to the bottom of it. Like to diagnose this, and I've been testing it myself, and yeah, like there's a reaction, right?
A reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember having this discussion with a family doctor. That's how I talked to the ministry. Oh, Brent, yeah, no, yeah, just definitely get the doctor did do diagnosis. Well, he said, I can't diagnose something that's not there, Brent. I said, well, they said, apply. Well, what are you going to put yourself through harm? I'm sorry, so I can't sign off on that, and I won't do it.
Yeah. Well, and so back to, you know, like I'm talking, I mean, we are talking about livable income versus poverty line. I mean, they've got us below the poverty line. There's there's no promise that this new Canadian disability benefit is going to bring us above what they call the poverty line. And the poverty line is about, you know, between 40 and 50% of what an actual livable income is.
Yep. Probably.
In my mind, if you want to measure poverty, you measure it based on that livable wage, a livable income, because that's the real poverty line. The poverty line isn't that 40% of median or 50% of median income, or however each province calculates it. The real poverty line, if you are not making a livable income based off a living wage, you are living in poverty. I don't care what they say, and you are too poor to even find a job. And if you've got a disability, your living income is 40% more than what a living wage is, and you like, so how are you supposed to survive? And this is my beef with Carla Qualtrough. This is my beef with the BC NDP. Like, I was born and raised, my father's from Bashaw, Alberta. I got family out here, but I was born and raised in British Columbia. I came out here because of you know, there was better economic resources and stuff. I didn't know when I came out here 21 years ago that I was going to get hit by a truck, and that my mother was going to be 83 and in the position that she needs now. There's all kinds of things that I couldn't predict, but now I'm stuck here. I'm stuck here because even without the barriers of the residency requirements, like having to live without an income for 3 months and then having to go find a doctor so I can go and get reassessed for all the things they decide they want me reassessed for, even though I got a medical file this thick. That shows them everything. And so all those barriers, but on top of it, I'm already not making a livable wage. I am 50% under a livable wage in Alberta, and I'm more than 50% less than a livable income for a single person without disabilities in BC.
At least 50, I'd say closer to 70 to 75%, because
if I'm making $20,000 or $21,300 a year in Alberta on AISH with my special diet allowance. And I'm also allowed to make, here's the other thing, in Alberta, so I get the $17.85 plus I get $150 some odd dollars for my special diet, which brings me to $19.39 a month, right? Which works out to 20 something, $300, whatever. I was just $300 above qualifying for the federal rent supplement.
Right. Yeah, that rent.
But so think about that. That's what I'm living on. That's what I'm living on now. If I move to BC,
you'll be getting
I'm going to be getting about $500 less.
15 plus
when I eventually get it.
Well,
and it irks me because, I listen to, like, when even under I was so mad when I was so happy initially when the BC NDP won. And then when they came in, like, I mean, it's a little bit better. EB's a little bit smarter. Like, they're doing a little bit better. They're being very aggressive on a lot of housing issues and things like that. But when it comes to supports for people with disabilities, when it comes to supports for seniors, when it comes to income support of any kind, regardless if you're a senior or a person with disability, they get an F minus. Okay. Like, they are so behind the ball. This is not what a progressive government does. This is not what we're supposed to stand for as social democrats.
It's like little pittance.
This is not what we're supposed to be about, helping people. And if you want to lift people and help people live in dignity and meet our sustainable development goals as a signatory under the UN Convention, not only on sustainable development, but on the rights of persons with disabilities. If you are going to meet those goals, then you need to stop the bull crap, stop the artificial poverty threshold measurements and market basket measurements, and start using the living wage.
Yeah.
The living wage, living income, that's the measurement. That's the measurement, and you need to add the 40% for people with disabilities, and you need to raise your low income. Like, our low income cutoff is like $1,500 above what a living wage is in Alberta, and in BC, your $20,000, your low income cutoff is $20,000 under what a living wage is.
Wow.
Like,
there's like right now, there's such an opportunity for the government to do the right thing. And I was reading all these.
You can tell how passionate I am.
Yeah, but I mean, right now, like I saw the latest post today. Well, we want to look at modernizing. We want to thank our committee for doing this and that. Well, it's great. All these nice, great words, right? Action speaks volumes.
Well, and that's what made me so mad. That's why I don't mind Sheila hearing this, that it was me.
Yeah.
Because you know what made me upset, why I left. And somebody tried to call me back, and I was just like, I just couldn't deal with it. Calling them back again, after they left a message. But I left this message. I mean, I didn't swear or call anybody names. It was an angry message because of everything that I just described about my situation with my mother, and the fact that I'm trying to get her services and I can't afford to pay for them. Yeah. Nobody in my family can afford to help pay for them. And my mother can't pay for what she needs. And then I'm literally hearing Sheila Malcolmson say to you guys, you and Jeff, and that oh, well, we gave you 4 raises in the last year, and none of them have even brought you to the poverty line, let alone a livable income for a person without disabilities.
Yeah, well, and that's why I wanted to. I mean, I fully agree with everything you're saying, Cassandra, but that's why I wanted to actually go back to my point earlier, because I mean, I think precedence is important, right? You have to go by what happened in the past. And again, if we go back to CERB, of what the federal government did when they rolled out CERB, they came out with the magic number of $2,000 a month. That was their magic number. So it
was based on the market basket measure.
Yes. Yeah. So they come out with $2,000. So even if we stick with that low number of $2,000, that's still, like I said, it's still a full $500 under, or
the poverty line.
What we're getting now, like, we're getting now in BC $1,500.
Not even that yet.
Not even that yet. So we're
another 2 days.
We're $500 under that $2,000 threshold
a month.
Right?
Yeah, I know, and I'm
so. And we're talking bare minimum here, right?
Yeah, that was based in 2020.
But think about this. think about this for a second. There's things I've had to pay out of my own pocket
all the time. I do.
I had to pay for. No, I have part of my disability from the car accident is my spine is so broken, and my neck and everything. Like there's so much. Like I am in so much pain trying to sleep, and my mattress, I could feel the slats in my bed through it. It was so old and so worn, and I had to pay out of pocket to get myself an actual not just some mattress from some secondhand place that was refurbished that was barely going to meet my needs. I needed to get something for the fact that I have this condition in my spine. I needed something comfortable, and I had to pay. I'm still paying. I had to go on credit, and I'm paying a monthly amount just so I could have a mattress to sleep on because they wouldn't cover it. So these are the types of out-of-pocket expenses that are eating into what I'm. And if I was living in BC, I wouldn't have even been able to afford to do that.
Exactly.
And so these eat up my income. You know, like hopefully I'll pay it off soon. It's one of my things because now I'm looking for a place. I can't even find a place to live here within my means. But even where I'm living now, so I'm currently making $19.39 a month. My rent is $1,000 a month. My other basic expenses are probably another $500 a month. I still have to go to the frickin' food bank in Calgary.
Yeah.
Which has a lower cost of living, but a higher, a lower livable income range. I am still struggling to meet my basic needs.
Yeah.
Like how am I going to go to BC and live and help my mother?
And well, that's the thing. We had a minister on the honorable Shane Simpson. He was the minister, the predecessor to Miss Malcolmson, who's now there. We had Nicholas Simons, then we had Shane Simpson, and before that was Michelle Stilwell.
Yeah.
And so, but Shane Simpson, he had measured the difference between at the time. I remember him saying so many times that he looked at Alberta versus BC. He sent his staff out there. Why are the rates higher? Why can't BC do the same thing? And he said, "Oh, it's all because of taxes." No,
it isn't.
No, it's not all about
okay. Alberta has absolutely no sales tax.
I know.
And they say, "Oh, well, it's the oil and gas." Well, I'm gonna let me give you something about the actual reality of our oil and gas revenues. Our government. I mean, it was better under the NDP. They gave us more. They were the ones that indexed. They gave us a big raise. Then they indexed everything to inflation. The UC, this newfangled, I call it a Frankenstein party because they mashed a bunch of pieces that don't really fit together to try to make a united right party called the UCP. Yeah. We call it the Ununited Conservative Party. But and they are like, they did draconian things to us. Like they said, "Oh, we're not going to touch they didn't touch the base amount of AISH.
No, they just took away the index.
They took, no, not just the indexing. They took away the index. It's all these other personal benefits. Like there was a general personal benefit that used to be just over $4,000 that you could get which you could use a maximum of. That was the maximum you could use under that category, and a lot of people use that to get power mobility scooters, right? Because it was just around the price for one. Mm-hmm. They cut that in half. There's medications that, like, normally the way it used to be, even under progressive conservative governments, if I went in to get a medication,
terrible.
If I went to get a medication and it was covered the first time, it was covered every time. I went in and got a medication prescribed for something that's going on in my back, and I got it filled. It was covered. I go in the next time, they're like, "I want $23." There was a huge thing. They tried to insulin pump therapy for certain people with aggressive forms of diabetes. They tried to kibosh that. And then there was a huge public uproar, and of course they had to reinstate it. But there's all sorts of hidden like all those extra personal benefits that you were talking about at Neil and we have those too, and that's where they made the cuts. They made the cuts in those extra personal benefits. I used to be able to get home care three like so I have multi-level spinal cord compression in my cervical spine and my neck. And so it's painful to wash my hair, like hold my hands up like that. I can do it, but it's like I'm exhausted like afterwards. And so I have somebody come in. I also get, because of my neck, I also can get vertigo and get dizzy and stuff. And I was terrified. So I have somebody come in to help me with the shower. Well, I used to get that a shower 3 times a week and housekeeping once a week. Now I apparently only need 2 showers a week.
Yeah.
Oh.
And now I only get 2 showers a week, and I get 1 hour of and actually it's not quite an hour because it's combined with my shower. It's an hour with my shower and the light housekeeping. That's every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And they call these things personal audits too, because I remember like my previous wife, she was in a wheelchair with lifelong disability. She has a motorized wheelchair. She had arthrogryposis, so her joints were fused right from birth.
Yeah. And
so she needed care aids 24/7, like 24/7 care aids, but she only got funded from the provincial government for 12 hours, so she always had to stretch it out, right? And, And every year or every couple of years at least, she would have to go through these personal audits where they'd have somebody come from the ministry and they'd say, okay, how many times do you go to the bathroom? How many times do you scratch your eyebrow? How many times do you brush your teeth? How many times do you have to put on make all this kind of stuff, right? So like every little thing had to be itemized, like how much time do you spend in the bathroom and how much time do you need to do this, that, and the other thing? And it's just it's like the disability really dehumanizing, right?
Yeah.
To have to do these personal audits.
The disability tax credit is based on the percentage of more time you need to do certain activities like dressing and stuff like that. But a lot of people, it's not due to one condition.
Right.
So they have this things, you have to explain multiple conditions. Like it's not that like
all the hoops you gotta keep jumping through, right, to keep on proving yourself.
Right, like that's with the disability tax credit. Like you have to sit there, like you have to get the right doctor that actually understands it and can say, look, the combined thing. And one of my things was like they initially they decided, even though my doctor that said that my condition with my spine was both permanent and progressive.
Right. Yeah.
They also asked this other question, which is the stupidest question. I mean, and this goes into episodic disabilities. They said, well, is there a chance that with certain therapy or treatments that she could get better? Well, yeah, temporarily. Eventually, I'm always going to get worse because it's permanent and progressive. So I'm always going to get worse if I get certain interventions. If is the big word. If I get certain interventions, which I have not been able to adequately get, by the way.
Yeah, like
I could improve my situation for a period of time, but ultimately it's only prolonging the inevitable.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, massage is huge, right? If I had massage regularly, that's huge for somebody like with myself, like has cerebral palsy, because my muscle tone is always tight, right? So to be able to relax your muscles is a huge thing. But I mean, if I can't afford regular massage, I mean, it's totally out of pocket. I mean, I wish I could afford it. I can't.
Like occupational therapy, all these things. Like they started sending a physio. I mean, he didn't do any exercises with me. He said, well, here's some exercises. and made sure, do you know how to do this? And it's like, well, I know them. But sometimes what you actually need is you need somebody to help you through it, even though you know how to do them. You still need that it's like, and it's like, well, why am this guy being paid to come in for 15 minutes and hand me a bunch of papers and say, do these exercises? If I already know the exercises, if that was the issue, I would be doing them. I need help.
I remember a time when I had dislocated a disc in my back, and I had severed two other discs in my back. One was actually, I can't even pronounce all the different terminology names, but one was like very severe. And for me, I was in a lot of pain, but I didn't realize how much pain until the x-ray showed. And the doctor, he was a physiotherapist and a chiropractor. And I was so scared about going to him, but I was referred to go to him. Like, it wasn't like you're going there. And a friend of my friend and a friend of Sonia's, he said, either you're going to go on your own free will, or I'm going to piggyback you. I'm going to throw you over my shoulder. And I'm going to carry down you there. Because I couldn't even get out of bed one morning. Like, I had something at a job. And yes, partly I fully take blame in part of it, not full of it though. It was a setup, but WCB gave me supreme shit because they said, you knew that you should not have lifted something up, right?
Whatever. Like, I'm sorry, but
but I said,
you shouldn't have. But did you have to? Like, was there something
and I was told that if I don't do it, you're going to be fired. So it was kind of like, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. So, and I realized, the thing is, it
was a minimum wage job too.
Yeah, exactly.
Minimum wage workers are more likely to feel pressure.
Yeah, and they have
to do things that they should refuse, but they're more likely to go, and and that's a whole other equity thing.
Yeah, like so what happened was I had the doctor, and he taught me how to raise my arm, to do exercises. I said, I can't do it, doc. I'm in pain. Well, let me work with you. Let me show you how this is. It's like rehabilitation. It's like teaching you how to move yourself. He says, because right now I'm doing the treatment. Right now you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to. You will in time, but you're not.
Right now you can. Well, that's my whole point. And here's the thing. So when they're talking about, this is the other thing, so often when they're talking about the extra costs of living with a disability, the extra costs of living with a disability, we talk about the 40 to 65%. Well, and you can almost hear the government saying it if you look on their website and read some of the stuff that they've said. I mean, they're talking about putting a framework to make for disability supports and stuff like that. And the problem with that is that you can put, no matter how comprehensive your disability support is, the only thing I've seen close to what might be able to do it is that disability insurance in Australia that they put together. Right. But outside of that, outside of something like that, there's no way for the government to be able to fund all the individual extra costs for each individual person with a disability. Like, there's no way to legislate that into, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just you can't do it. So just give us a livable income for not based on a livable income for a working age person. Okay. Plus the 40%, 40 to 65%.
Yeah. Because of
just give us that. And let us do it. Let us fill in. We're still going to need some other supports from you. Yeah. But just if you just give us the 40% on top of the living wage plus the 40%, and still continue with the supports that you're already, then we could probably afford some of these other extras that you can't possibly legislate into covering, and maybe have some kind of, and be able to participate in our communities in a meaningful way.
Have some kind of dignity. And here's the other thing too, is a person's disability doesn't go away. So if you move, like Cassandra, it's like your situation is you want to live in BC because your parents are there, right? You can't afford to move there. So, and now there's a
mom's getting old, and we're getting scared for her, and I'm trapped here.
And to me, it's wrong when the government says, oh, well, you need to now apply under there is to see if you qualify. The doctor now has to reassess, get a new doctor, get a reassessment. Oh, you know what I mean? Disability doesn't go away. It should be transferable. It doesn't matter what you're in.
Well, yeah, like my girlfriend, I have a girlfriend that's in Calgary now. Like I knew her before her brain injury, but I was there when she went through rehab for her brain injury from a stroke. We were in our 20s.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's been disabled since her 20s. She was she managed to work and do a lot of things. I mean, work that I, she even does work now that I can't do. But she doesn't do it all the time. Like her body's hurts too bad. But she was on ODSP in Ontario, right? And then her mom got sick and she comes to Alberta. Mm-hmm. Right now, of course, you're getting more money than you're getting in Ontario, which is great. Uh-huh. Cost of living is better, so it's a better situation. But the first time, like, I had to calm her down, because a lot of people will be like, they'll get this back and they're like, oh, I was denied, and that's what she thought. She thought she was denied, and I had to look at the paper. I'm like, no, you're not denied. They haven't outright denied you. What they're saying is they want you to go to a doctor and get reassessed for this and that, to show that. And it's like, it's a brain injury that she has had since she was in her early 20s.
Exactly. Nobody should
pardon my language.
It's okay. No,
but how? In what? Like, there's so, I'm just so tired. I mean, even some of my favorite politicians. Yeah. I am so tired of being dismissed and saying, oh, you're asking too much. No, we've not been asking for enough. We're always asking. We're always begging for crumbs, because we're so afraid of being turned down. We're so afraid of being turned down by our government.
Yeah.
To give us an adequate, that we're always asking for crumbs, and they always give us a few less crumbs than what we actually are asking for. Yeah. And they never.
Or they wait a month, or a year, and they skip a year and go, oh, look what we're doing. Oh, we skipped a year. And so really,
well, I was just reading something when I was doing this research about the $15. They were talking about the 15 in that one article about the $15 an hour. Well, they started asking for the $15 an hour in 2017 and didn't get it for 3 years. Well, by the time they got that $15 an hour, what a livable income had increased every year for those 3 years since they started asking for it. So they're now so they gave them the increase to $15 an hour, but now they're 3 years behind what they would have been if they had just frickin' given it to them. And that's what they're constantly doing to us. And the other thing is this idea. I am tired as a person with disability to be treated like I'm some kind of welfare case. I worked my whole life. I raised a child. Sometimes, even when I couldn't when I was a single mom and I couldn't find a job within my work hours, I volunteered. I volunteered for an organization on the downtown east side. At one point, I was doing 80 hours a week in volunteer work. 80 hours a week in volunteer work and collecting an income support check. Yep. Okay. And when I did work, I when I was able to get employment within my daughter's, I worked. When I was the whole time I was in Alberta, I worked. I paid my taxes. I made decent money for a lot of the time I was here, because I was either selling cars, I was managing, I was the business development manager. I was taking home, my take home was $65,000 a year. And do you know what I mean? So I've paid my taxes. I've contributed to society. A lot of people were like, oh, why do we have to pay for people with disability? I never minded that, because in my mind, part of the social contract is I didn't mind paying, because by helping other people, what if God forbid something, what if God something happened to me and I needed that? Mm-hmm. Well, and then it happened, and the God forbid happened, and I needed it. And then they're like, I'll never forget, I lost my, on this this regional manager for Asia, because she's like, well, you know, it's tax. She like literally, I had been unable to work for maybe a year. And prior to that, I was like a business development manager, like a sales manager. You know what I mean? Like, making decent money. And she says, oh, but that's taxpayers' money. And I went, I said, taxpayers' money? I said, the only reason I'm not paying taxes right now is because some drunk driver ran a red light and totaled me. I said, I only haven't been able to work for the last year, and up until the last year I was paying taxes, and I paid your salary, I paid for this program to happen, and you're telling me, don't tell me. And she just, like, honestly, you could almost hear her on the phone, like her whole body going, oh shoot,
that actually sounds almost similar to a situation that I went through, where Sonia and myself, we had found a brand new place we moved to, okay? But before we moved there, we were living in Nanaimo at the time, okay? We got chased out by bed bugs, so that's another story. But anyway, so we were living in Nanaimo, but we found a nice place to move to. You know, the ministry said to me, you're going to put yourself into a dire situation, to a crisis situation. You're moving from a cheap place to a very more expensive place. And don't reach out to the government, because if you do that,
I don't know my situation. Like, I'm not an infant. I know how to manage my own finances, even though you don't give me enough.
I told him, I said, don't talk to me like I'm a kid or an imbecile. I said, I already had a mother. I don't need another one. Right to the radio. And I actually
good for you.
A formal complaint against her, because she says, if you apply for a crisis supplement or anything, we will deny you. And I said, really? Well, we'll see about that one. So anyway, long story short was I actually filed a complaint against it. And they're like, you do realize your rent's a lot higher. We won't move you. We won't do this. We won't do that. I said, you know what? I said, if you guys would actually listen when I say raise the rates and actually listen to, people, where would we be at right now? But no, they don't listen.
That's the whole thing. This idea that people that because I'm on Aish, I've never paid taxes in my life. I've never contributed to the system. And not only have I, but even if I was so disabled from birth that I was never able to hold a job, my parents have been paying. Like I said, my mom, since she was 17 years old working, she's 83. She worked out of the home. She continues to, at 83, she continues to do volunteer work for the retirement society. She's done stuff with Friends of like she's still, like she manages their membership list and calls people up and manages all the she is still, even though she's now trapped in her home and she needs more care, she's still contributing to society, and that's worth something. That is worth something. And she paid her whole life for the system to take care of her and to take care of me if anything should happen to me and I need it, even if I never paid. But I also paid into it.
It's like since I was a little kid, when I was 12 years old, I wanted to do this paper route. They wouldn't let me do it until I turned 13. Anyway, they made an exception, let me do it, because I was so desperate. I wanted to make money, so I wanted to buy a bike. There was so many things I wanted to buy, because my mom, I lived with her, and she was a single mother, and she brought my brother and I up, and so she couldn't afford all the extras. And if you wanted it, you had to go out there and actually work for it, Brent. You need to go and do a paper route, babysit, do a paper route. I don't care.
But all of these things, don't you think the fact that we've managed to, in spite of our disabilities or when we became disabled or whatever, we've been able to contribute. And guess what? You know what? Do you know who all that unpaid labor and those volunteer shifts at all those organizations? Do you know who the majority of that unpaid volunteer labor is? People with disabilities.
Yep.
So we're actually working, and you're not paying us. You're giving us a check and telling us that we don't contribute to society, so we shouldn't ask for more. In the meantime, all that money you're throwing, governments are throwing money at food banks and throwing money at this. And we're the ones that are the volunteer labor that are running those things for free.
Well, that's the point I wanted to make, is that I said this before, is that all of these social assistance programs, whether they're in BC, Alberta, anywhere across the country, they're all set up as charity. It's all like that's the way it's pillared. It's pillared on charity. It's like it's not money that you deserve, or it's not money that we're gonna give you out of because you deserve it. It's charity. Everything is charity.
Well, and the other, like, as if you didn't contribute to it, like, as if you never, like, as if you didn't, like, and that's what ticks me off is, like, especially with the whole food bank and food insecurity thing, what really ticks me off back, you know, about this whole poverty versus living income is that they're like, oh, we're helping people with food insecurity. The government's going to give the millions and billions of dollars to food banks and charities.
Right.
And it's like, why don't you just give the money directly to the people that need it? Yeah. And then you won't need those frickin' charities, because we're the ones doing the labor on those charities anyway.
Yeah.
They can make the decisions that's best for the individual of what their needs are, rather than what the government says, the food bank says that their needs are. And
it's unpaid work. Like we're doing the unpaid labor to keep these charities going.
Yeah. But then meanwhile they want to congratulate themselves. Look what we're doing.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts. And that was the other thing I think that spurred my call, where I left that angry message with Sheila Malcolmson. There was a comment about food. She made a comment about food banks, and I was just like, I just was like, are you like, forget the food bank. The food bank. Do you know? We had in the Great Depression, we had soup banks, right?
That's right. I remember that.
After the Second World War, we no longer had soup lines. We did not need soup lines again after the Second World War ended. We never needed food banks again until the 1980s, the Great Recession of the 1980s.
Yeah.
When we had that was the first time we started seeing soup kitchens and then food banks. And they were at the time, they were supposed to be a temporary measure, but they've turned it into this industry. Companies like Loblaws, they donate their expired food, and they donate it to these places, and then they get these huge tax receipts. They get these huge tax receipts
to write it
to
off
circumvent them paying their fair share of taxes.
Well,
and it's this whole, and it's like, and then governments just keep throwing money, and they're wondering why more and more people. Then they were like, oh, how come more and more people need food banks? Yeah, because you're not directing your money properly.
But now you've got the middle class going to food banks. People that, when I say middle class, my mom used to tell me stories when I was a kid, and I like the neighbor said, "Oh, I have to go to a food bank. What is that?" And my mom says they should never exist, and she said they never did. When I was a kid, she said never even thought about it. She says, it was never a thing. And exactly, you're right, Cassandra. Like she said, there were soup kitchens after the World War, and then like you mentioned, like the food banks came out slowly. Now, it's
like it wasn't until the 80s when we started them again. Yeah, after the Great Recession, we didn't need them.
And the idea too that I worked for 20 years before I got on disability, and I kept working even when I went on disability. I've been on disability for about 14 years, and I kept working still a little bit, but before I got on disability, I still worked for about 20 years, and I know that you yourself too, Brent, same thing. But even if I never work again in my life, which I might not, even if there are like lots of people that are on disability that can't work or have never worked.
Yeah.
Even if that's true, we're still paying taxes.
We're still taxpayers.
Yeah, because we're still.
Well, even though we don't have
a grocery store.
We're going to the grocery store, and again, to take to take my own example, like I did that one video about my wheelchair, right? I told you that the government, the provincial government, is paying for. They paid $2,100 of that, right? But it still means that I was paying the $1,700 out of my own pocket because they're not going to cover me fully. So guess what? That $1,700, I had to pay $1,700 plus the tax on it, right?
Yep.
So again, you're saying I'm not a taxpayer? Excuse me? And I had to pay property tax this year, which is double. Which was double this year. Over my last 4 or 5 years, my property tax went like double. So you can't say that I'm not a taxpayer because I paid my property tax. I paid my tax on my wheelchair. I paid tax in the grocery store. I paid tons of tax. Don't tell me I'm not a taxpayer because I am a taxpayer.
Even in Alberta, where we do not have a provincial sales tax, I mean, and I'll tell you, like things like the GST and provincial sales tax, those are the transparent taxes that we pay because everything that we buy, both provincial and federal governments have hidden taxes on them.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like there's hidden taxes that are included in the all over price of something.
Yeah.
That people don't account. So it doesn't matter. You're right. It does not matter. Even if you never worked a day in your life, even if your parents never worked a day in your life and contribute. Every single thing that you purchase has some kind of tax on it, whether you can see that tax or not. It's like the fuel tax. Like we got this 13 or 15 cent break on fuel on our gas tax.
Yeah.
From our provincial government, like it's supposed to be help with the cost of living. There are other taxes on there, both from the provincial and federal government that are not being talked about. It's just one specific tax that they're talking about. I mean,
75 cents on every dollar at the gas pump is all tax.
And let's be totally honest about things too, is that these fuel taxes are being passed on to the grocery stores, right?
Yep, big time.
Because all these people that are that are transporting our food to the grocery stores are paying the fuel tax, and that's getting passed on to the consumer.
But here's the deal.
In the grocery store.
This leads into my other thing I wanted to talk about.
I was just going to mention on that quickly. I was just going to kind of interject on that. I learned that back in college. A course I took. It's all about logistics, and so I'm glad you mentioned that, Neil. Is that the middle guys. Now, okay, so I'm going to start quickly summarizing because I learned this stuff. So you started at the very top here. So you're talking about, say, the agricultural. Okay, so the farmer grows all this. Okay, then they pass it on to, now it goes off to the processing center. They process it, goes off to the warehouse. It gets sent out there. So how does it get sent out there? Now there's different modes. There's by ship, containers, and now get shipped onto trains. It's loaded onto trains. So those are called intermodal. People go, what is that? Okay, now they're intermodal. There's different intermodal transportation. So we got double cart ones. And actually going fast forward, they actually use those in actually building modular housing. Those are shipping containers. So you can do a double stack intermodal. And people go, huh? Yeah, I was confused when I learned this too.
And then there's Super Bs.
Yeah, we have to bring on Ellen for that.
Yeah.
He's good at that stuff.
And these are really heavy containers when they're on trains, when they're going along. So you can imagine if they ever hit a truck, that'd be it. But anyway, so they get shipped off. Now they go to another warehouse, and now a semi picks it up. Now they send it out to their distributor, which now sends it out to the grocery stores. So now you got fuel. What fuels those trains? Diesel. See, so it all
goes in. But here's something about inflation and in regards to all of that logistic crap. Right now,
exactly.
Here's something I'll say. I don't always agree with everything the illustrious leader of my favorite political party federally says, Mr. Singh, but he is dead. Here's something I think he gets it wrong. So but this he's got right. This is what he's got right. This is what he's got right. right now, grocery stores like Loblaws and Walmart, these giant
corporations,
multi-billion-dollar corporate grocery chains, are making record profits. Profits are not revenue.
Right. Yeah.
Revenue is all the money you take in. Profits are what you have after you've finished paying up all your overhead and the cost of business.
Yeah.
So that's what profits are. Galen Weston and what's his name would have liked us to believe that profits and revenues are the same thing, but they're not.
They're not. I learned that in ledger sheets.
Yeah, profits are not revenue. They're not making record. They're making record revenue. They're making record profits after the money after they've paid for the cost of running for their business. They're making record profits. Okay,
Cassandra, I got
yeah, farmers. The guys that are raising our food, that are growing our crops, that are raising our beef and our chickens and our eggs and our milk and it doesn't matter if you drink oat milk or cow milk. Yeah. All those guys, they are also getting gouged by big corporations that are supplying them with their feed and all the things that they need to, right? The insurance companies are gouged. Okay. And they're not getting paid more. They're not getting paid more for their cattle, right? They're not getting paid more for their crops. And sometimes they're struggling to get enough from their crops and their cattle to even make ends meet. Okay. And it's getting worse for the farmers.
Oh, huge. It's
getting worse. But the grocery stores that are distributing, these big corporate grocery stores that are distributing the food, they're making record profits. The farmers aren't getting it. They're getting less. The workers are getting less.
Yep.
Right? The workers are getting less. And the consumer, the people that are purchasing them, and that they would not be rich without us, we're being gouged and charged these, and the only people getting ahead are the wealthiest people in this land, and the people and these big corporations. Okay. And here's my problem. There was a few summers, this is before a few years, about 7, I don't know. I went into the grocery store and I wanted oranges. I refused to buy an orange that year. And the reason I refused to buy an orange, because it didn't matter which grocery store I went into. They were all from frickin' South Africa.
Right.
I'm all for trade. There's things that I can get in another part of the world that we cannot produce here because of a number of factors.
Right.
That's what we used to call trade. That's what we used to trade. Right. But you didn't import food that you didn't this is a food that you can't preserve. An orange off a tree. You're picking it before it's ripe. In order to do that, they're picking it before it's ripe.
Yeah.
Then so they can put it on a ship, and it ripens while it's on it's ripening off the tree while it's on the ship. It's losing nutrition on that.
Yep.
It's losing nutrition. You're increasing your carbon footprint because of the fuel to run the ship.
Yep.
Fuel for the train, the fuel for the trucks, the fuel for all the workers that run. All this stuff is all stuff to take that orange from South Africa. And when we've got oranges in California is the closest.
Exactly.
I mean, if you want to go a little farther, go to Florida. We've got oranges right there. The orange crops weren't bad that year. It wasn't one of those years where California all of a sudden didn't have, you know what I mean? And here's the thing, but our local farmers, like, I don't care what province you live in, you've got agriculture there, and you can probably, even in major cities, the Calgary is one of the 4th largest city, in Canada. I can get to a farm within 15 minutes. I live 10 minutes. Get this, not even 10 minutes. I'm less than a 5-minute drive from downtown Calgary. And in 15 minutes, I can be at a farm.
Wow.
20, 30 minutes tops. I can be at a farm. I can go and buy, right? So why am I paying low blogs?
Yeah.
Why am I paying low blogs for like when the farmer's losing out, I'm losing out because Loblaws is making record profits, but I can just go to the farmer and cut out the middleman.
Yep. That's
the
where
other
all
thing is
starts.
You can grow a head of lettuce. You can grow tomatoes.
Oh,
you could even grow cucumbers. You could even grow an eggplant in a little 10-gallon water jug aquaponics system that you can make yourself. You can grow all year with a $10 grow light with and a $1.50 little timer that you can get off Amazon. You can grow all of that stuff in your freaking kitchen all year round. Yeah. So why are we struggling to eat? Yes. And so
we get high humidity here, so it should.
We're facing unprecedented climate change. Our farmers are suffering. We're having housing insecurity. Like there's not enough. We're not building enough homes. Big again. Back to the big corporate, multinational company, real estate companies, investment firms are buying up, and they're competing. So the average person wants to go out and buy maybe their own little condo or their own little rental property to make a little bit of rental income. These big corporate investment firms and real estate companies, these big publicly traded multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies are competing with the average person to buy up that property, and they're causing the price of real estate to skyrocket to the point that the average person can no longer afford to buy even their own family home, let alone a little something to make a little bit of extra money on rental income for those that can't rent. And it's the big so this is all happening, and you know, all of those things combined have made me want to do, you know, aside from all my passion about livable income, I have a solution. When I'm looking at all these problems, and I started thinking about this before COVID, a lot of things have happened, but I've also started connecting with some people. I had this idea, what if we had like a co-housing? So a co-housing is like a co-op, but it's not like a co-op elects a specific board, and the board makes a decision and everybody pays, and they don't always like, in a co-housing situation, everybody has a vote. So it's like a proportional, it's like as if Canada had proportional representation, right? Instead of electing a certain board to make all the decisions, which is kind of how every single person has a vote every single person has a vote, and that vote is counted exactly as one. It's not counted with a group of, anyway. And so they make a decision about how they're going to do. Everybody has their own independent living quarters with their own kitchen, but they also have communal areas, and they work together. I wanted to take that co-housing idea, and I looked at this. I looked at this project, and I mean, there's other similar projects that I've seen around the United States specifically, but the first one the model I like the best is the one in Detroit. There was this, they took an area like maybe like East Van in Vancouver, or like, you know, Forest Lawn out here in Calgary, where one of the most poverty stricken areas, and they had like these empty lots. And I think it was I could be quoting them, but I think it was a group of women that actually decided. Anyway, they managed to somehow managed to get this lot. And they turned it into an urban farm in the middle of the city, not on the outside skirts of the city, in the middle of the city, in an impoverished neighborhood. And they built this urban farm, and they started growing food. They were able to feed their entire community, and they had enough. They started having so much excess left over that they then took that they started selling it to like businesses, like local restaurants and stuff, right?
Oh, nice.
And right? And then they also, it became a tourist it's become a tourist attraction, this little agrihood. And they've even started their own little industries off the food that they're growing and producing themselves, where you can go into like a restaurant on the site and and you can have a meal made from what they grow. And what they, and so I, I'm big on
community.
So, but it's not a community garden. It's a farm.
No, I know.
Urban.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it's an urban, like instead of doing these little community, because somebody said to me, "Oh, we got community garden." This isn't a community garden. This is like you're farming. Like they took a square. It was like a square city block, or just half of a square city block. And they built and they just started. They put up greenhouses. They got, so they not everything's in a greenhouse, but they got greenhouses. They got all of this, and they're and all the people. So this is where the co-housing comes in. Is the co-housing community in? I like the tiny home. I want to see I've been talking to a tiny home builder about looking into universal design in building tiny homes, because I've seen some. I have seen a couple built with universal design, and saying, why don't we start building like you can build a tiny home community. We can use, there's this fund that the federal government, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's slipping my mind right now. That if with a project like that, we could actually apply for that funding, and you could do a rent to own situation for people like you and I, right? Because now you're looking at a tiny home, but you're not just you're not just purchasing. So maybe for a nominal rental fee goes to the equity in your little tiny home within your co-housing community built around your urban agrihood,
right,
or urban farm, but you're not just contributing to the community by paying off your little nominal rent fee for your little time. You're also contributing because everybody is going to have a job based on their ability.
Yeah.
Right? So people that have more ability will do a little bit more and do certain things, and people with limited mobility will do with what's in their beings, but everybody helps each other and contributes.
Yeah, everyone has their own
and works. And we can do this, and we can build permaculture and food gardens. We can make our parks into food gardens in these types of communities, and we can transform the way we live in cities. And not only will that, by having that type of greenery also, and all of that, and adding permaculture and all these things to the mix, and these co-housing, not only are you tackling food and housing insecurity for the people that are struggling the most, and mixed income. It should be mixed income, because some people got to offset the cost for others. But you're also tackling crime. Greener cities, the more shrubbery, the more permanent kind of agriculture, whether it's just the green, that stuff you're growing in your local park, or your little piece of backyard or whatever. All of that, the more greenery you have in a city, the cooler the temperatures. It cools the temperatures down. It mitigates it offsets your carbon expenditures. We need to stop. Yeah. So all of this, actually, what it does is it not only attacks our most immediate issues like income, food, and housing insecurity, but it also tackles climate change and offers viable solutions, because the way we live in our cities right now is a big contributor. If we could make those cities greener, like greener, and when I say greener, I'm not talking about the energy you use necessarily. I'm talking about more trees, more greener, actual greenery in your city. That is going to reduce the temperature. Like, we wouldn't be getting these scorching hot summers like you're sitting in, like if we make sure that we are contributing to the land and preserving that land on an ecological level. We can do that in cities. And I've been doing a lot of research into it, and I'm starting to make some connections. And so stay tuned. I am in the process of trying to move myself, and and I am living with disability, and I'm struggling with packing on my own. I'm struggling with even finding a place I can afford.
Yeah.
But I have to be out by September 30th. So and I'm starting to get some momentum, and I've been talking to people in my area. I talked to a guy by the name of Chad Smith. He's the brainchild by Be the Change Calgary, which does a lot of outreach on our streets with our homeless. I've talked to Ann Landry, who's a huge housing advocate. I've talked to a lot of other people that I've met. Like I went to an NDP barbecue, and I met some ladies that are living in an actual co-housing place, but it's a buy your own place it's a different kind of model than but it's still the same idea. And so I've been telling people and just feeding the seed, and I'm starting to get more and more people interested. And once I settle in, I'm going to be starting a GoFundMe, and I'm also looking at, I'm exploring land trusts. If you know anybody that is an expert in land trusts, I'd love to hear from them. I'd love them to contact me. Okay. Because I'm actually exploring, because land trusts are a way to preserve that land. So you can take that land and preserve it for agricultural and ecological reasons through a land trust. And that means that you can still have ownership, but nobody can actually take it to some other kind of use. Right. It's put in that trust. So I've been I've been exploring some of these kinds of things to get it started. But I want to do it because I just want to show people that we do not have to feed these big corporations like Walmart and Loblaws and these big corporate investment funds that are making housing unreasonable. We can take a stand by doing projects and working on projects like this. We can take a stand and say, and take the business away from these people and make them unviable so they can stop. If our governments don't want to do it, which they should, there's things that the governments can do, then there's
yeah, they should.
Well, they used to invest in co-op housing more.
Well, this isn't co-op housing though.
Well, I mean, yeah, I realize that, but I mean, it's kind of a similar kind of model.
Yeah. Well, there's things I don't like. There's things I don't like about co-op housing that are less likely to happen in co-housing because of the more democratic way it's run. But yeah, we have been on for almost 2 hours. So wow!
If we should,
that was deep.
Yeah, we should.
It's always enjoyable though, because we get into like a lot of great discussions and just really focusing on the issues. I mean, one thing I wanted to kind of mention too is mention about like the federal counterparts, and as we've all seen, I've seen it so many times in my news feed. I see everyone's talking like Jag makes saying, right? You don't talk about disability related stuff, and he hasn't. I mean,
it's not just him; it's happening provincial in every single provincial
Nobody
NDP.
Wants to talk about disability stuff. Like
nobody wants to. No, and we need to put. I saw a great one of my favorite Alberta podcasters, Nate Pike with the Alberta Breakdown just did a show with the 905er podcast out of Ontario. They did a joint show, and one of the things that they were talking about was the fact that the way our current mainstream media is running, they're not covering a lot of the local issues or the niche issues like what we're talking about, whether it's disability or income or any kind. They're not talking about what's going on it's exactly like it's podcasts like yours and mine and all we're the secondary media. We're the ones that are becoming the voices for the actual people, and I think and hopefully more governments. I know a lot of politicians listen to your podcast and also listen to theirs, and and they should listen, because we're the ones that are talking about the bread and butter issues at your kitchen table.
Well, it's all about the lived experience. It's all about getting like real people talk about like how it's affecting the policy decisions, how it affects people's lives. One simple decision has a ripple effect on a person's life. So if it's a negative decision, how do we turn it to a positive? And one thing I always learned when I was a kid, I was taught by one teacher, Brent, you can turn a negative into a positive. No, I can't. Yeah. Yes, you can. You can do it. And then teach you how to do that, right? Because if you're having a bad day, I could get going, my neighbor made me, irritated me. Well, how do I turn that negative energy into a positive? Look at as, I'd say, hey, I got somebody else coming on my show who maybe they have something else to say. So I turn that focus of negativity into a positive energy, because listening to people, it makes it a bright day of knowing that I have to then say, hey, how do we collectively, and this is a question I get a lot, how do we as society change policy decisions, how government officials see it as? I see comments of, well, we recognize we need to modernize. Okay, well, how do we do that? The talk, no, it's like, do this.
Just do it. We're telling you what to do. We're telling you what to do. Like this, there's only so much. It's like when you're in a union negotiation between the union and they're like, well, there's only so much money in the wallet. It's like, no. There'll be more money if you just listen to us.
Well, the part that really irritates me is when the NDP formed government, right? And back in 2017, which is yay, like, right away, $100 increase. Okay, bravo, right? Then they skip a year. Oh, well, we returned the bus pass. No, you didn't.
You know what?
Yeah.
When I saw, I was so excited for them. And when they said, oh, we're giving them $100 in, I lost my mind when they were like, I was like, what in, like, Alberta, the conservative province for the last 50 years gives a person more money, and you're like hundreds and hundreds of dollars behind what a person in Alberta is. Your cost of living is thousands more, and you're giving them $100, and they haven't had a raise in how many decades? Like, or a decade and what? Like, how long? I lost it.
Yeah, exactly. And then all you'd hear is, well, there's more to do. It's like a little playbook, and all they do is copy.
No, it's just enough to shut you up.
Yeah.
What they think will shut you up, and we got to stop shutting up and buying into it. Sorry.
Well, there's another thing too. Before we end this segment, this will be a good one. And you'll got a good laugh on this one, which you probably heard of me say on one of the other podcasts. So one thing that Jeff and Sonia and myself, we learned, and I literally almost lost it. It was like, okay, so you're going to give $125 increase. Sonia says, well, why do we got to wait 5 months? That was the question she had. Well, and here's the minister's response. Well, I recognize that, and yes, it's not okay. It's not okay. So she admitted it's not okay because here's the thing, because the computer system was not updated since 2002. It's so old, but we're coming out the new one in 2 years. So it's 21 years old, and it can't process fast enough any bigger increases. It can't handle the input. My gosh, I used to work with DOS. I used to program with DOS way back when, and I know they use DOS, and I could make DOS do so many things. I made my machine reboot. I made it actually send out batch little programs. And back then, before the internet came out, I had it. I just got so intrigued of programming that I made it send out little information packets of, oh, you're interested in this.
It's not that.
Okay.
Get a better IT.
I know.
Hire a better IT person.
Yeah.
Like, come on. That is just anybody that knows anything, even a basic amount about like DOS or anything knows. It's not that hard.
It's not. It's not hard at all.
Even if you've got an old system, I get it. The old systems, there's a lot that they can't carry with the new programs, but there's no reason if you've got an apt IT person that's really good at what they're doing, they should. There's no reason why it should be that much of a problem.
It's not. It's like the bus pass. Same thing. And there was more to it than that. It was a lot that it had a deadline behind the scenes. Do it or lose the whole program. But here's the thing: I talked to in my adventures on my Breaking with Brent segments and in my new segment with Traveling with Brent. I got to talking with a few people around the country on my journeys. And here's the thing that I learned too: is seniors have that bus pass. You don't hear them, and they get the same bus pass. It's just a bunch of rhetoric, right? And
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
the former premier, he says, remember, he used to hear in the legislature, just give them back their bus pass. It's a simple means of transportation and constant. And then where is it? Sure, you can have a bus pass or have the money, but that was what a former colleague, sorry, not colleague, predecessor upon predecessor, who had taken it away because it was equity in the system. You know, I mean,
good
just
old
give
Stillwell.
bus pass. Yeah, but you know what? Just give them the bus pass back. Plus, just let them keep the $52. Oh, God forbid! No, we can't do that. I mean,
well,
wow.
This is it. It's excuses, and I'm not. I don't want to minimize.
It's a
like,
shell game. It's a shell game.
I've been in the background of IT, and sometimes it does take time. I shouldn't be so dismissive, but
No,
but at the same time, it is an excuse because there's no reason. There are other things that they do in record time when they want to do them. And it's not just the federal government, even provincial governments, even in BC. There are things that they do and put out in record time when they absolutely have to. Look at that. Look at the increase, the COVID supplement you got. Record time, no problem. So don't tell me that like that is the like, you know, we're not. And they don't just say it to us because we're disabled. They tell the average person that, and most average people do not. They have the acumen in their specific area of work or their specific area, and they're not really paying. It's like, oh, the government said, oh, it must be true, and they're not really paying attention and digging down. And then they get off the hook. But it's all bull.
It's the urgency. Yeah, it's just the urgency.
It's how much urgent when the public puts their feet to the fire and enough people get up in arms, how fast do they move?
Oh, of course.
You know, and
otherwise the other ones are like, oh, they're just making a bunch of noise. Oh, they haven't heard anything yet.
Well, that's why, you know, I'm making this call here. Like, people, like, listen to everything I said. Read the links that I provided for Neil. They'll be in the thing, and read up on just the studies that I outlined, and read for yourself that there are other people saying this, and what a livable income is, and demand that. If you're a person with demand that livable income plus that 40%, demand it, because you don't deserve to live on crumbs. You don't deserve to anything less than that. You're not living with dignity. They say they want us to live with dignity. Anything less than a livable income for person with a disability, you are not living a dignified life. Your human rights are not being met. Your basic needs, and you need to demand it, and stop accepting crumbs and jumping up and down every time, you know, they give you a little crumb. Oh, they're giving us $100. No, demand a not the poverty line, $25,000 a year. Demand a livable income. No less. I mean, the average, as I said, it's more in Calgary, it's more in BC, but the average $45,000 a year. Like, why should we be plus the 40%? Why should we be getting any less as a person with disability, especially when so many of us pay into the system, whether it's through jobs we worked before we couldn't work, or part-time jobs that we still do, or the volunteer work that we do for the charities they keep throwing money at that could be going to us. That's what we should not be asking for any less.
I would love to have you back on very soon, and we'll have a part 2 of this segment, and the next one we'll talk about REITs.
Oh, I'd love to dig into that.
No,
I'm not as good at the REIT.
Me neither.
I'm not as good as the REIT stuff, and I'll be honest, but I'll dig into it. I got some information. I have.
I'd like to. I'm not an expert when it comes to REITs either, but I'd like to kind of look at the difference between market housing with REITs versus subsidized government housing, like under RGI. I think in Ontario.
Well, there's also non-profit housing too that does low.
Yeah.
So like you got BC, like I got Calgary Housing, you got BC Housing, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the government one, but there's also non-profits that will and they get government grants too. So that's another avenue. So there's.
So I'd love to kind of look at the difference on that, and the difference on Neil will do Neil, you can schedule Cassandra and we'll do a part 2 on that one. Do a headline of rent geared to income, maybe somehow word that in there with it, and then we'll really target on that topic, because I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that one. I know that some of them back in Ontario, they mentioned about that too. So that's because my landlord, I mean, just before we end the segment here, my landlord, I mean, she's a REIT. She's an agent. She works for a REIT. She gets it. She agrees with me 100%. Why
it's not just REITs though. The other publicly traded, there's other publicly traded companies, corporations like investment funds and stuff like that are also there. That along with REITs that are responsible for driving up the price of real estate to the point that the average person, whether you're the average renter or the average or potential homeowner, you're being priced out of the market because of them. Yeah,
absolutely. And that'll be a part that I'll kind of continue on that part where I'll talk about the management. You'll be interested to hear about the story on that one, where I wasn't sure where the manager stood on it. And I just kind of threw it out there and said, we're going to be getting a $125 increase. She goes, well, it's good for you, but not good for the ones in the other part of the housing sector. And I went, oh, she goes, why didn't the government just get rid of the shelter and just make it just straight line? Everybody benefits. Oh my God, if you're paying subsidized housing, getting subsidized housing, oh no, you don't need extra because you get that. Really? Cost of living. So that was her view. And that's what the former predecessor wanted to do, but the government wouldn't let him do it. Ooh. Yeah, Shane.
I want to hear about that.
Oh yeah.
One day he's going to do a tell-all book, and it'll be really interesting.
Oh, I know. I can't wait.
I'll be first in line to get an autographed copy.
Hey Neil, we were picking at him on that part. He says, I can't talk about it. I can't.
Yeah. No, I'd love to hear a tell-all from him.
Yeah. We're getting little bits out of him here and there, but it's like come on. It's like having a bad hair day. You should see my hair earlier. It was really
actually, I looked at what the NDP. I don't want to be totally critical of the NDP. I mean, some of their plans in attacking the whole housing situation are actually some of the most aggressive that I've seen in any province, and other people, even Alberta NDP was wanting to model some of their stuff off of what some of the things, and like the healthcare, what they're doing to try to tackle the healthcare situation and fast tracking, foreign doctors and nurses and stuff like that, and people that are already living here that have these medical degrees that have not been able to work. They're trying to make it. They're doing a lot of really assertive and aggressive things, and I hear. I've even heard, because Rachel Notley was talking about these integrated health teams. It was such a good idea that even Danielle, even the dreaded Danielle Smith is trying to talk about them now. And you're talking about them out there. So there's some good ideas going around, and BC is definitely probably, I mean, it's not enough. There's all these other areas they need to be more aggressive at, but there are some things that they're doing that are very trailblazing and leading. So I don't want to be critical of everything. I'm right, but but I do have frustrations.
Me too, especially when you got some of the members within the party who then agree that, oh my gosh, like, they got to do better. Like, they must do better on the rates. So, I mean, when you're hearing it from the insiders,
and like I read you those reports when we're talking about livable income versus poverty line. I mean, look at and the market basket measure. I mean, that was just, I only cited three. There was more. There's tons of people that have written about the inadequacy and all the flaws with this market basket and poverty line.
But then we'd be up to hour 3. So
I can't. I'm just telling you that I cited those many, but there's so much. So there's people. There's no excuse.
When I had the meeting, when we had the meeting with Jeff and Sonia, we had the meeting when Miss Malcolmson said we're going to be going with the market basket measure because Miss Quantrill, Carla Quantrill, that's the model that they're going with. He looked like he was going to be the Temple of Doom. He was going to blow up. I thought,
who was that?
Jeff. And I thought, oh God, he was like a ripe tomato. And I thought, he's like a time bomb. And I thought it was like a, it's like, and I was just, and
I feel you, Jeff. I feel you.
I had him on the show there, and I threw it at him that way, and I said, Jeff, you look like you were ready to explode. And I looked at Sonia, and I looked at Sheila Malcolmson's staffers because they were right there, and I kind of looked over, and they were sitting beside me, and I thought, he's gonna blow up anytime now. And the look on their face was like, I thought, I hope you guys aren't the ones who wrote that script to tell Malcolmson that. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh boy, like this is going to backfire. And then, so I said, I guess the meeting's now going to conclude. So, and I said, and
exit stage left. Yeah.
So they said,
Elvis has left the building.
so they asked me, did you have any other questions? And I said, yes, Sheila, I have a question. Would you like to come on my show? She goes, I would love to come on.
Can I come on with her?
Oh, hey, Neil.
Well, but you know what though?
I'd be nice. I'd be nice.
But the thing is because she's only going to be on for 15 minutes, all right? Remember?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're not going to be doing a live segment with her because it's going to be so tight. So it's going to be
a pre-record.
It's going to be a pre-record thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if we had more time, then we could. But
yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want to take her for 2 hours, but I have some very pointed questions that I would write down and definitely want to ask her. But maybe I'll just write them down and give them to you.
Because after that, it'd be like, instead of what coffee's in this cup, there might be other things in the cup.
Well, I would I'll write down the questions and I'll send them to you because I would like to know like this whole market. The issues around ours.
Well, I know
poverty line versus livable income. Like, I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, and like Brent and I have already talked about it. I know he's going to talk about RGI because I know that's a huge thing. But I want to talk about my pink unicorns because I think that's a big thing too. It's like
Yeah.
You can't.
It's all pink unicorns, isn't it?
It's all pink. It's all pink unicorns, really.
That's all we've been talking about is pink. Is the pink unicorns they've been serving us? But
it's always splashy announcements. Well, we recognize it needs to be modernized, and it was quoted when they had one of our colleagues on the opposition party sitting in their committee. And she admitted that it's archaic. The system is archaic. It needs to be. It needs to be completely redone. And I got criticized one time before we end the segment. I remember one guest, I said, well, it was a systemic, right? They should design that way. They're like, no, and then of course it was saying, no, it's purposely designed that way.
It was. You got to think back to when it was designed, who the people were, what the train of thought was at the time.
Yeah.
And it's been this lie they've been telling us.
And they just copy paste as they go along, and But anyway, Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on. I'll get to schedule maybe later this week as part 2. Yeah,
it's up to you. What you got? Tell me what you got, and
what actually, I guess what day works good, Neil? What good's for you and what?
I have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
So we'll just leave it open-ended.
Yeah, we'll leave it like that, and get Neil will arrange with you, and we'll get you back on part 2.
Sounds great.
Okay.
It was fun, guys. Always love it.
Always fun.
Yeah, no, fabulous. Thank you.
It was
so
intense this time.
It was, but it was great. It was great. It's always great.
A 3-hour tour. 3 hour tour.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today. It's a longer episode today, but it's always great having Cassandra joining on, and we talk about these important issues that affect Canadians with disabilities across this national country. Should I say Canada? Well, can we make Canada a much better country? Sure we can. With your lived experience, your voices, come on the show. Let's talk And if you don't want to come on the show, join in solidarity with other PWD across the country, upcoming rallies within each province. I think you need to get our voices heard within our communities. Let's collaboratively come together. Go to your local mayor, your local MLA, whatever you may do, your MPs, make your voice heard. I mean, every voice counts, right? Do what we can do as a country, come together, and we can make change happen. And because if we don't, nothing will change. Status quo will continue. So subscribe to Neil Matheson's YouTube channel. Stay up to date on all the upcoming episodes of my guests coming on. Do you want to be a guest? Contact Neil or myself. We'll get you scheduled in. Stay tuned on Breaking with Brent and my new segment, Traveling with Brent. It's great.
And I wanted to do a quick 15-second plug on my website too, the daddybentlegs.com. That's daddybentlegs.com. The reason why I'm plugging it is because I put a lot of work into it. I've actually done a lot of SEO, the search engine optimization, and it's really working good now. And I've got all of your podcasts. I've got a devoted webpage there. I've got the audio only podcast being served up there now through Spotify and all other channels like Google and Amazon and everything. So it's worth stopping by there at daddybentlegs.com and seeing everything. It's I think it's great. I've had the website for like 10 years now, and this is the first time I've actually put some effort into it to like optimize it properly. So it's kind of cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's and I thank you, Neil, for doing that. And and it's all about the guests who come on, and I thank all my guests who've come on, and you want to come back on, future guests come on to the show. We want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I want you to talk about how government imposed legislative poverty affects your life. What has caused you to be where you are right now in your life. Whatever your story is. I mean, everyone has their own story. I'd love to hear from you, and please reach out to Neil if you feel more comfortable reaching out to Neil or myself. If you reach out to me, I'll forward it on to Neil, just so you know, because Neil is the editor-producer of the show. Does a wonderful job, I think, and it's all thanks to Neil for all your work that you do behind the scenes.
Yeah, thanks, Neil.
And also, I need to quickly say thank you to my secretary, which she doesn't get a lot of thank you.
She's behind the scenes.
She's behind the scenes. And as the podcast grows, there's going to be other opportunity for more people to be added on. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned on that. And I want to thank Cassandra for you coming on a regular basis too, because it's so important hearing us all coming together collaboratively to make Canada a better place.
I think there's a lot that a lot of people like to focus on the fact. I mean, as we all know, that there are not everybody agrees within the disability, but there's more that we
we don't.
But if we get down to brass tacks, we actually agree on more than we disagree on, and we need to start focusing on those things that we do agree on.
Because there's always little components from every person has their own area to it's like a puzzle, putting it all together.
Exactly.
It is. Yeah. And I learned from people too, I know I've said to and I'm not going to say who or what, but I've said the wrong thing, and I'll admit hey, I maybe told somebody, hey, they you don't need this because, and I'm whatever, but hey, you live and learn, right?
You only know what you know until you you don't know what you don't know until you know it, and
and learn from other people.
We're also human.
Yeah, we make mistakes.
Sometimes we make mistakes. The difference between some people will make a mistake and they'll double down on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the most important thing is if somebody makes a mistake and they're willing to say, hey, I made a mistake.
Yeah, but hey, I screwed up, and then you learn.
That's like that Margaritaville song. Yeah. Wasting away again in Margaritaville. It could be my fault.
Yeah. And then you hear the train.
Looking for that lost jigger of salt.
That's right. Some
That's
people
me.
say that there's a woman
To blame.
But
I know
it could be
my
fault.
own damn fault.
There you go.
Yeah.
And on that note,
again.
we're out.
Great.
No more singing from me. Okay, bye everyone.
Thanks, everyone.